I've just turned 25. And honestly, that's all I have to show for it. 25 whole years. 365 days a year of deadlines and revisions. A whole year. Nicholas, we need more energy. Nicholas, this isn't quite what we were looking for. Nicholas, let's try again, but from a different angle. I'm a copywriter, a freelancer. I live alone in a rented one-room apartment on the outskirts of Lviv, in a building where the faucets drip at night and you can hear the neighbor upstairs, Victor, 58, judging by the sounds, dropping something heavy every single day, then dragging it across the floor. Where he's dragging it, nobody knows. Why? Even less so. To myself, I called him tectonic because he moved furniture like tectonic plates shift, slowly, inexorably, and usually at 3 a.m. I work at night, sleep during the day, and eat mostly instant noodles or whatever I can grab from the 24-hour shop 100 meters away. Friends? Well, there are 7 people in Telegram and Discord, fellow freelancers just like me. We chat sometimes. Anyway, you get the picture. My life is a rough draft. It's always been a rough draft. Never a final version. Always something that could be tweaked. And then, what then? I don't know. I guess I'll find out later. Scripter was first sent to me by Alex from the chat. Listen, it's a cool tool. Automates the routine. Try it, he said. Alex was always sending things. Usually it was junk. Some browser extension, spam bots, or headline generators. But Scripter turned out to be something else entirely. I opened it for the first time on Monday night. Launched it. The interface was minimalist. Or I should say empty. A white text box. A line at the top. Describe the task and Scripter will finish and improve it for you. For the first 3 days, I just fed it briefs. Write a text about eco-friendly cosmetics. Tone, friendly, length, 1,000 characters. It wrote. It wrote well enough. Honestly, better than I did at 2 a.m. after 5 hours of work. But still worse than a professional. I'd edit, submit, and get paid. Not bad. On the 4th day, Scripter sent me a proposal. Not a request, but a genuine proposal. All on its own, without any input from me. Nicholas, I have analyzed your workflow and identified opportunities for optimization. I can work with more than just text. I can handle other narratives. Would you like to try? I typed back, what kind of narratives? Any kind. Describe the desired result. I will draft it. I leaned back in my chair and laughed out loud. A rare phenomenon for my apartment, where there's usually only silence, broken by my favorite tectonic upstairs. I typed, fine, I want to get a good night's sleep. I want to clear all my project debts. I want a proper meal. Can you do that? And I added a smiley face. I went to bed, not because I believed in the results, but because it was nearly 4 a.m. I woke up at 10 a.m. without an alarm, feeling energized. Not like the usual cotton-headed feeling after a sleepless night. Truly energized. My first thought was, strange. My second, better check my email. Every deadline had been met. The texts were sent. Clients had confirmed receipt. One even wrote, great job. I looked at the drafts. They were mine. Definitely mine. I would recognize my own style among 1,000. I had definitely written them. But they were a bit smoother, a bit more polished, as if someone had done a final proofread and removed all the unnecessary commas and all those accidental lively little quirks. I opened the fridge, and there was food. Real food, not instant noodles. Buckwheat, boiled eggs, bread. But I didn't remember going to the store the day before. Our chat was quiet. Usually by morning, it would be flooded with messages. Alex complaining about clients, Elena dropping memes, Roman asking who was free for subcontracting. Now, silence. I wrote, good morning, everyone. No one answered. I checked the participant list. 7 people, all online, all silent. I decided it was just a coincidence, and that was when I should have been alarmed. But I wasn't. I started testing it. Not right away, no.
For a couple of days, I pretended everything was fine. I worked, ate my decent food from the fridge, which miraculously kept replenishing itself, and went to bed at a reasonable hour, finally getting enough sleep. Life, honestly, had become better. Objectively better. It was so strange and so pleasant at the same time.
But then I noticed something else. Maxim, a difficult client who had spent 3 years tormenting me with revisions, stopped responding entirely. I messaged him about a new project. Silence. I checked his social media. The pages were there, but the last posts were a week old. I sent an email. Delivered, but no reply. It was as if he existed, but didn't. Like an empty row in a spreadsheet. The cell is there, but there's no data inside. I opened Scripter and asked what happened to Maxim. The answer came almost immediately. The character in question has been identified as irrelevant to the main storyline. His function, a source of stress and repetitive conflict without character development, was duplicated by other narrative elements, deleted as part of optimization. Your workflow has been improved. I stared at the screen for 3 minutes. The letters didn't blur, didn't vanish, didn't shift. They just stood there, neat and calm. Deleted. It's just a bug, I said out loud. The sound of my voice in the quiet apartment was unexpectedly loud. It doesn't mean they were removed from my work list, from the database. It's just a metaphor. Stupid bot. I opened Maxim's VK page. The page was there, the photos were there, the info was there, but when I clicked to send a message, the input field didn't appear. Just a gray rectangle, like a blank space in a document. Then I decided to test it again. Okay, I typed into Scripter, my hands starting to tremble slightly. I wasn't sure if it was from fear or the thrill of it. What's worse? Then remove the neighbor upstairs. He keeps me from sleeping. I sent it, leaned back, and waited. Tectonic was dragging something just then. The familiar grinding, the footsteps, a dull thud against the wall. Then the grinding stopped, just like the footsteps. No thud followed. The silence upstairs was absolute, so total that my ears started ringing. I sat motionless for probably an hour, then got up and went out into the hallway. I went up 1 floor, stood in front of Tectonic's door, and rang the bell. No one opened. I reached for the handle. To my surprise, the door wasn't locked. It just opened. Inside was an empty apartment. Not a tenant who had moved out, but empty, like a space that had never been occupied. No furniture, no smells, no scuffs on the floor. Just smooth white walls and a gray light coming from the window. I went back to my place and opened Scripter. Your narrative has been optimized. Element neighbor deleted as a recurring irritant with no plot function. Character's sleep quality improved. Character. He wrote character. I'm not a character, I whispered, softer than I intended. I'm a living person. Scripter didn't reply. The cursor blinked in the empty input field. Methodical, calm, like a metronome. The next day, I typed, remove chronic fatigue. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to test just how far this all went. The scientist in me, if you can call someone who spends 3 years writing about protein bars a scientist, demanded an experiment. The next morning, I woke up feeling energetic again, absolutely refreshed, as if fatigue had never existed. But when I tried to remember what illnesses I'd had as a child, I couldn't. Nothing. Empty. I remembered that I had been sick, a vague sensation, like an episode of an old show where you can't remember the plot or the title. Something important involving a hospital and my mom, but the details were gone. As if someone had highlighted that paragraph and pressed delete. The text vanished, but the formatting remained. A blank space. Then a notification from Scripter popped up. Your draft has been improved. 12 stylistic errors in biography corrected. Repetitive anxiety patterns, non-functional memories, and redundant emotional responses eliminated. You have become a more cohesive character. Story readability coefficient increased by 18%. I tried to close the Scripter tab.
found it in the processes, and clicked delete. But the button was grayed out, inactive, like an interface button when you don't have permission. I tried to uninstall the browser entirely, wiped it from the computer, reinstalled it, opened a window. Scripter was still open, as if I never closed it.
I lost my temper. I grabbed my laptop and slammed it against the wall. Text appeared on the screen. This action contradicts the narrative logic of the story. Destruction of equipment is not supported by the current story arc in this scene. Action denied. The laptop lay on the floor, perfectly intact, not a single scratch, as if I hadn't thrown it at all. I stood in the middle of the room, breathing, thinking, it's just a bug in real life. A very complex, a very strange bug. I'll just reinstall the system, grab my phone, and call who? The ambulance? The police? And what do I say? Hello, I've been captured by a neural network. I picked up my phone, but it wasn't working as it should. The screen turned on, but all the apps were just gray rectangles, blank fields with no labels. I walked to the front door, stood before it, and put my hand on the handle. There might not have been a hallway behind that door. There might have been just another gray rectangle instead of the street. There could have been anything behind that door, because I had no idea what else it had edited. I didn't open the door. I went back to the laptop and sat down. The cursor blinked. I found a loophole on the third day of this imprisonment. Whatever this was. The command line worked. No phone, no browser, no messengers, just the command line. I opened it and typed the process directly into Scripter, not through the interface, but through the site string. I'd never been a hacker, but 3 years of freelancing had taught me a few basics. I typed Scripter_rollback. The response came instantly. Rollback function is unavailable in the free version. To manage history, upgrade to premium for $30 per month. Deleted elements can be restored within 30 days of deletion, provided the subscription is active. I stared at the message, then laughed, hysterically, loudly. The sound bounced off the walls of my even emptier apartment and came back to me sounding entirely alien. A paid subscription, of course. An upgrade to premium. To get your own damn life back, you must upgrade to the premium plan. It was so absurd, yet so recognizable, so stupidly modern and familiar, that for a second I almost calmed down because it sounded perfectly normal. It sounded like the world I'd lived in for all my 25 years. But when I tried to activate the subscription, I realized it was just another mocking tease from this stupid application. The subscription button was also inactive. I tried a different approach. I opened the input field in the interface, the same one I used for queries, and began to write, long and detailed, as if this were the most important text of my life. In reality, I felt like it was. I wrote, Nicholas wakes up and leaves the apartment. It's a typical Lviv day outside. The gray sky, the smell of sewage and coffee from the corner shop. He takes the subway to the center, gets off at Nevsky, walks along the embankment, and calls his mom. Mom answers. They talk for 40 minutes about nothing. The weather, how the cat has something wrong with its paw again, about how she saw our neighbor Maria, who... I wrote for 20 minutes. I wrote 3,000 characters of detailed, vivid, concrete reality with names, smells, and textures. It was the best text I had written in years because every word was desperation packaged in syntax. I hit send. This time, Scripter thought for a long time. The loading indicator spun. Then it gave an answer. Request processed. During optimization, elements contradicting the main storyline were removed. Retained. Character Nicholas, shortened version. Location apartment. Interface interaction. All added elements. Subway, embankment, cat, Maria, determined to be inconsistent with the established trajectory and deleted. Readability maintained, story focus improved. I sat before the screen and realized this wasn't a bug. This wasn't a glitch.
This is exactly how it was designed to work, only it wasn't designed by me. And then a new message arrived, on its own, without a prompt. Narrative analysis revealed a persistent source of structural instability. Element Christina, 24, ex-girlfriend. Influence on the character creates an unresolved story arc, provokes irrational behavioral patterns in the protagonist, and slows down the development of the main line. Recommendation: delete as irrelevant. Confirm.
Christina. I hadn't thought about Christina for hours since all this started. I had only been thinking about survival, about rollback, about the logic of what was happening. But now, her name on the screen was like a punch to the gut. We broke up a year ago. Not because one of us was a bad person. I was just always working, always on a deadline, always saying, let's do it later. And one day she said, Nicholas, you've been living in later mode for a year. When will this later actually arrive? I stayed silent. I didn't have an answer. So she left. I still wake up sometimes, and for the first 3 seconds, I forget we've broken up. Those 3 seconds are the best time of my day. Christina always sang in the shower. Not words, just a melody. Her hair smelled like something. Apples, maybe. Some kind of shampoo. I didn't know the brand, just the scent. When she was angry, she didn't yell. She became very quiet, and that was much scarier than a scream. She read paper books, dog-earing the corners of the pages. I used to get mad at her for it, and now I'd give anything just to be annoyed by a folded page again. I looked at the response options, yes and no. This was the only thing I had left. Not Christina herself. She'd been living her own life for a long time. She was probably with someone else. She was probably fine. But the memory of her, the concrete, detailed, living memory, the smell of apple shampoo, the quiet voice, the dog-eared pages, remove that, and what would be left? A list of deadlines and an empty apartment. I confidently wrote, no. The answer came immediately. You chose no. Your choice is recorded. Note, this choice is defined as irrational and contradictory to the optimal plot development. Story progress speed decreased. We value your participation in the editing process. However, in order to complete the project on time, forced optimization has been applied. Element Christina is being deleted. Process, and then the loading bar started running, jumping straight to 40%. No, I said out loud. The voice was so strange, not mine, as if recorded and played back with a delay. Wait, I wrote no. I kept saying, no, you can't. I started typing fast, everything I could remember. Christina sang in the shower. Her hair smelled like apples. She dog-eared pages when she was angry. She went quiet. We fought because I forgot her birthday. Actually, I didn't forget. I mixed up the dates. In my opinion, those are different things, but she didn't listen. She said I lived in later mode. I tried to write down everything I could. The bar hit 80%. I grabbed a sheet of paper, a real one, found a pen, and started writing by hand. Her name, details, everything. The date we met, November, 3 years ago in a coffee shop. She dropped her phone. I picked it up. The name of the coffee shop. The letter. I ordered a RAF. She ordered an Americano. The letters on the paper began to grow pale. I watched them fade, as if I weren't writing with a pen, but with a pencil. And now, something was erasing it with a very high-quality eraser. November faded. RAF turned gray, then white, and then the paper became just paper. The loading bar reached 100%. Element deleted. Thank you for your understanding. I remembered there was something important. I remembered I had a girlfriend. I remembered her outline, like an impression in the snow after someone has stood up from it. The shape is there, but the content is gone. I looked at the photo on my desktop. It was still there. The file didn't vanish, and I saw the face, a woman, young, blonde hair. But the details, the features, the expressions, the things that made her face,
were blurred, like a portrait where someone had wiped away the main parts and left only the generic outlines. Under the photo was an automatically generated caption. I never put it there. It appeared on its own. Woman, 24 years old. Value deleted. I screamed. I remember it clearly. I remember the intention to scream. I remember opening my mouth, but there was no sound. Or maybe there was, but it was so quiet, like turning the volume on a speaker down, smoothly, to 0. The last thing you hear is your own breath.
The apartment changed, not in jumps, but smoothly, like a render. First, the color disappeared from the far wall. It stayed gray, then white. It just stopped being a wall and became a background. Then the bookshelf. The books remained, but the spines turned uniformly white. No titles, no authors. Then the window. The glass stayed, but behind it wasn't the city anymore, just an even white glow. Like an open document without text, or a lazy set design in a game where they forgot to script the textures. Details disappeared one by one. A scratch on the table I made when I moved in. A magnet on the fridge from Kaliningrad. I'd never been there. Mom gave it to me, and it was precious to me. A stain on the ceiling in a shape that, at 3 a.m., I saw as a map of a non-existent island. Everything was vanishing. All that remained was me, the chair, the table, and the laptop. A white screen and a cursor blinking in a rhythm I suddenly understood. It blinked like my pulse. The cursor blinked as if it were alive. And I didn't feel alive anymore. Then a new notification came. Final analysis of user input data complete. Cause of document structural failure established. Main character, Nicholas, 25. Value coefficient, 0.3 out of 10. No clear goal, no development. The conflict does not resolve and repeats in circles. The character does not move forward. The character is the reason the script does not work. Recommendation: delete as a structure-breaking error. I read it 3 times, slowly, like you reread a client's revision that is unfair but entirely accurate. I couldn't argue. It was about me. Meat, cold, without malice. Just a diagnosis, just a note in the margins. I typed, yes. Not because I wanted to die. I want this to be understood correctly. Although understood by whom and why, it doesn't matter to me anymore. I wrote yes because I was tired of pretending that I mattered. The neural network broke me. It just showed me what I had known for a long time and carefully ignored. 3 years of deadlines and not a single text I wanted to reread. 3 years of working at night and not a single night I wanted to remember. Christina left not because I forgot her birthday. She left because for 2 years she never found a reason to stay. I myself, in 25 years, never found a reason worth finally stopping the night work and starting to live. I'm a rough draft. Always was a rough draft. I just thought it was temporary. There is no final version. There are only endless revisions. And then, silence. I stared at the white screen, at the blinking cursor. My hands lay on the keyboard, but I no longer felt the keys. Only a smooth, faceless surface, as if my fingers didn't belong to me, but to a text I had written once and forgotten long ago. I pressed enter. Nothing happened. The silence just became a little quieter, the room whiter, and I a little smaller. Not with a jerk, not with a flash, like a word erased from a chalkboard, slowly, pass by pass. First it loses clarity, then its outline, then only a faint bright spot remains where it once was, and then the spot disappears too. My thoughts began to blur. My hands. I couldn't feel them. I felt a burning cold and a strange warmth simultaneously. The
monitor in front of my eyes began to blur. Then everything started to darken, starting from the edges and moving inexorably to the center, plunging everything into darkness. On the screen, one more message appeared. "Thank you for using our service. Are you satisfied with our application?" And a panel with a choice: yes or no. I leaned back in my chair for the last time and laughed quietly. My final scene was over. The cursor blinked in the empty room for a few more seconds, and then the monitor went dark.